Hello, I'm Kerry Shamblin, and I practice jyotisha, also known as Vedic astrology. I have been offering a monthly forecast since 1999 where I track how the planets are moving through the sky and how they may be affecting our life on Earth. I also work directly with others through counseling, teaching, and mentoring. Welcome to the first installment of Vedic Storytime on the Planetary Influence podcast. Today I want to talk about the story of the Sun and Saturn. And there are so many beautiful Vedic myths and stories that are so therapeutic and so informative that you can actually learn astrology and a lot just from these stories. I tell this story a lot when I'm working with folks, and it's a great study. So as it goes, the sun in jyotish, or in Sanskrit we call Surya, and Saturn's name is Shani. So as it turns out, Surya and Shani are related. And if you start checking out Vedic astrology and learning things, you will find that they are classified as enemies. The Sun and Saturn are enemies. And the Sun, Surya, is actually the father of Saturn, Shani. So they are related and enemies. Wow, that sounds familiar. A lot of us have that story in our lives. So the way it went was that Surya was married to Sajna, and they had some other kids. And at a certain point, Sajna got a little tired of being the wife of the sun. He was, as you can imagine, he's a king-like figure and very busy and in demand and very shiny. And I felt that she felt that she got a little bit lost in the shuffle. So at a certain point, she decides to run off and turns herself into a beautiful mare, a horse, and runs off into the wilderness, leaving her shadow in her place at the household. So we call shadow Chaya. Chaya means shadow. So Chaya gets installed as the mother figure in the household of the sun. And Sajna's idea was that eventually, the sun's not going to notice. He never noticed whether I was here or not, so he's not going to notice if it's just me or my shadow. So the shadow wife, Chaya, ends up eventually getting pregnant by the sun and having a child named Shani. Shani is Saturn. And things went on in the household of the sun for a little while. But the older kids, especially Yama, he was a little bit older, in the son of Sajna and Surya. After a while, he noticed that the fake wife, Chaya, was paying more attention to her child, Shani, than him. And he was older. He should get the props. He should get the attention. So Yama decides to out this whole story to his father. He goes to Surya and tells him how he's been deceived. And then, of course, Surya gets angry. And he goes to Chaya and Shani and says, you're not my wife, and I reject you as a child. You're illegitimate, so get out of my household. And where's my real wife? Somebody go get her. Bring her back. So that's how the Sun and Saturn, Surya and Shani, become enemies. And in our Vedic astrology chart, when we look at it, it's very interesting to analyze the relationship between the Sun and Saturn in the chart. The Sun represents our individual nature. Who am I? How do I shine? What makes me different? What makes me stand out in the world? What is my sovereignty? What is my agency? How is this going to benefit me? We associate the sun in the chart with Ahamkar. Ahamkar means ego. What do I do? Who am I? Ego isn't bad by nature. Ego is a definition of who am I. It's only when the ego gets a little too big or a little too small and throws us out of balance that we start having an ego problem. When we're spending a lot of time thinking how great we are and how nobody else could do this besides me and look at me, that's an inflated ego. That's an out of balance ego. That's too much focus on yourself. Also, when we're focused on I'm not good enough or I'm a loser or this isn't, I'm not worth it, low self-esteem, that's an equal ego imbalance. So we don't want either of those. We want a smooth, kind of confident person who knows who they are but doesn't have to lord over anyone or doesn't have to kowtow to anyone. That's a healthy, balanced sun in our chart. And on the other hand, Saturn's role in our Vedic astrology chart is to remind us all that, we're here in this lifetime experiencing karma from a long time experience that we don't even remember, and that almost everything that we are doing here has been designed by us, good and bad. Karma's not always bad. Sometimes it's very good. So Saturn reminds us that we're here for a short time on this earth plane to experience life in a body separate from other bodies and to experience our karma and play things out, and that we're not going to be here very long. This is a temporary situation. We're born and we live and we die. And as on the way, we get old and lose our faculties, and it's very difficult on the end of life. So Saturn is a tough lesson guy. In a way, Saturn tells the sun, yes, you're a very shiny, amazing individual, but hey, you're not going to be here very long. So when we study the Sun and Saturn in our charts, that's kind of what we're looking at, is the sun is the champion of the individual, and Saturn is the champion of the collective. And each one of us, as we navigate life, has to do their own thing, but in the context of society, and families and towns, right? We're not alone here. We have to interact with our brothers and sisters when we're children and other kids in school and people at the workplace. So it's a balance between self and other. And that's really what Saturn and the sun tell us in our chart. What is our study of self and other? So it's interesting to check those relationships out in a chart. For example, when I see people who have a Sun and Saturn conjunction, meaning that the Sun and Saturn are in the same sign or they're together in the chart, I often question if the person has had ever a feeling of rejection by their father, or if there's a tense relationship on the paternal side. And often, 9 times out of 10, people will say, yes, that's exactly what happened. My dad kicked me out of the house, or I rejected my dad because of this and that. So that story of trying to self-express as an individual in the context of a family group or a society comes up really large when the Saturn and Sun end up in the same sign and house in somebody's chart. So that is the story of Saturn and Sun. I hope this has been entertaining for you, and we'll do more. There's a whole bunch more. There's so many beautiful therapeutic myths that that India has been holding for us. And if you know some of these stories, you're going to find that my version might be a little different. When you go into it, there's always little thises and that's with storytellers and different versions. So, but the thrust of it is the same underneath. The Saturn and Sun, the rejection of the Son by the Father. You can also look at it as light and shadow. Saturn is depicted as very dark. His mother was a shadow, literally. So this light and dark is also plays in to the Saturn Sun story. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for listening to this presentation. If you are interested in following my work, look for Kerry Shamblin Astrology on YouTube, Spotify, Patreon, Facebook, and Instagram. My monthly forecast is published in written and audio format on my website, planetaryinfluence.com, where you can join my email list or book a one-on-one session with me. My goal is to light your path toward a joyful and liberated life experience.